She hadn't seen him in 10 years. The sky had turned over 1,000 times since blood stained the grass and fire split the silence. But when the wind changed and his scent found her through the dust and distance, everything inside her stopped the ache. In her leg, the weight of survival. The scars carved by men who only took. None of it mattered because something deeper, older than pain, moved inside her. A flicker of a memory, not made of images, but of stillness of breath, shared across fear of a presence that once stood between her and death. And even now, after all this time, when she should have turned and run, she stepped forward not from instinct, but from something stronger. A pull that crossed the years like a whispered name carried through thunder and shadow. And he too froze, caught in that moment, where the past collided with now, where the ghost of what was became real again, where all that had been lost returned without warning, not to be understood, but to be felt, to be known, to be undeniable. Every morning, Elias woke before the sun, not because he had to, but because he always had the sense something might return in the quiet. Before the world woke, he moved through his routines. Coffee in a tin mug, the slow walk to the northern ridge, the scan of the dry horizon with tired eyes that once held fire. He spoke little to the other rangers, kept mostly to himself, nodding instead of answering, laughing softly, but never first. His cabin was clean, but not lived, in a small wooden carving of a rhino sat. On the shelf, dustless touched, often beside it, an old radio that never played. He would sometimes sit in the tall grass alone, watching the tree line where nothing moved and everything remembered. He no longer looked for tracks, but his boots, always, carried him to the same stretch of land where years ago the earth had been marked by something sacred. The way he crouched, sometimes one hand in the dirt. Eyes unfocused was not a habit. It was muscle memory. Grief disguised as stillness. Longing dressed. In ritual, no one noticed the way he paused before locking the gate at dusk, as if part of him still waited for something to come home. Something he never spoke of, but carried in the silence between heartbeats, in the places his eyes wandered when no one was looking. It happened so fast, the sky split open with thunder and gunshots. The ground shook beneath the weight of panic and rain and blood. Elias ran without thinking. Heart-pounding breath, ragged, the flashlight swinging wildly through the darkness. Trees slashed past him like ghosts. Then a scream, not human. Sharp, heavy, full of terror, he found them too late. Mara was already bleeding, her leg mangled in steel, her calf stumbling beside her eyes, wide with confusion. And then another shot. Then silence. Then motion. Mara turned, not to run, but to fight. Even as her body failed her, she charged and the poachers scattered into the night. But the damage was done in the blur of screams and storm and smoke. The calf vanished into the black. Elias fell somewhere, between breath and death. And when he opened his eyes, Mara was gone too. Nothing left but prints in the mud and the cold absence of something that once meant everything. In the days that followed, he searched until his legs gave out, until his voice cracked from calling their names into nothing. The savannah gave nothing back, not even a sign, not even a lie. Hope became exhaustion. Exhaustion became ritual, and ritual became retreat. He stopped speaking unless spoken to, stopped walking. The old paths, instead staring at maps without reading them, and when they offered him a transfer, he took it without a word. Without looking back on the outside, he was the same man, same posture, same slow, deliberate steps. But inside, there was a silence so thick it swallowed every memory until all that remained was a numb echo of before. And though the seasons turned and time kept moving, something in him stayed frozen in that night, in the rain, in the moment. Just before it all broke. The world kept breathing, but he did not let me pause for a moment. Tell me, where are you listening from? Have you ever had someone, a person or even an animal, remember you after years apart? That quiet, unexpected recognition that breaks you open in the best way. If stories like this speak to something deep in you, hit subscribe. There's so much more to come, and I promise It only gets more heartfelt from here. It started with a photo, blurry sunstruck taken by a patrol drone barely in frame, 2 silhouettes by a watering hole, one smaller alert head high, the other heavier slower, with one leg dragging behind, and something in that posture, in that angle of the head knocked the breath from Elias's chest. He stared at the image long after the others moved on the room, buzzing with theories and noise. But he heard nothing, only the pulse rising in his ears, that shape, that limp. It lived somewhere deep inside him, buried but never erased Mara. The name rose unbidden from his throat, rough with dust and disbelief. He hadn't spoken it in years, not even in dreams. And now it came out like a plea, like a question, like a prayer. It didn't make sense, not after so long, not. After all that had been lost, he tried to reason with himself, told himself it was wishful thinking. Projection, ghosts of the past, wearing the faces he missed, but logic never stood a chance against memory. He found himself gripping the photo tighter eyes, burning with something he couldn't name. Not quite joy, not yet. Hope, just the sudden unbearable ache of what if? What if she was alive? What if she remembered? What if there was still something to return to? And then fear followed close behind. What if she didn't remember? What if she turned away? What if the past meant nothing, but he had lived with silence for too long? Lived with maybe, and never, and not anymore. So he packed slowly, hands steady heart. Not he told no one. He was going, he simply left, not as a ranger this time. Not as an officer of the park, but as a man answering the quiet scream that had lived inside him for 10 years. The roads felt both foreign and familiar. The trees older, the wind colder, but his steps grew quicker, as if the land itself recognized him, drawing him back to the place where everything ended. And maybe something could begin again. The clearing was quiet, in that strange heavy way the earth gets before something sacred happens, wind barely touching the grass. Sun low and golden turning every shadow soft. Elias stepped forward slowly, as if any sudden movement might break. The moment he didn't breathe, just watched the 2 figures ahead. The young Rhino held her head high, muscles tense, uncertain, ready to defend. But it was the older one who held him, Mara. Her body heavier, now her skin marked by time and survival. The limp was unmistakable. Her back left leg dragged slightly, her gait careful and weighted. But it was the way she turned that unraveled him. Not the movement itself, but the pause just before it, as if something in the air had shifted, as if scent or silence or memory had whispered his presence. Her ears flicked, her shoulders stilled. She turned her head, slowly, eyes landing on him and holding. And in that moment time collapsed. 10 years folded in on themselves. The pain, the silence, the lost days all compressed into one endless breath. He froze, his body reacting, before thought, his knees weakening his throat, closing around the sudden rush of everything. Her eyes did not widen in alarm. They simply watched, steady, calm, ancient. And then, with impossible grace, she took one step forward, then another. The young one shifted, ready to block her path. But Mara brushed past her, gently, slow, deliberate, limping, through space, through years, through doubt, until there was nothing between them but memory. Elias dropped to his knees, unable to hold the weight of it. His voice, barely a sound. "You're alive." And she stopped close enough that he could see the faint scar. Across her brow, the same one from the night she stood over him while bleeding and breaking, and still choosing to protect him. She exhaled once deep and slow, the kind of breath that carries not air, but history. And he knew in that moment without proof, or words that she remembered, not just him, but the bond. The stillness, the way he had once simply stayed, and she had once simply let him. And though no hand touched, no voice rose. The space between them bloomed with something too large to name the young. Rhino watched, uncertain but not afraid, because whatever passed between the 2 living echoes in that clearing, it was not threat. It was return, and it was real. It began with a glance, Nothing more, just Mara lifting her head when Elias appeared at the ridge, a flick of her ear, the way her body relaxed just slightly, and he stood there, not calling, not moving, just letting her see him. No longer asking to be remembered, only hoping, and slowly over days, over visits that looked like silence, but were full of meaning. The space between them shortened one afternoon. The daughter came closer, curious, bold. She circled him once, not too near, then bounded back to her mother, kicking up dust. And for the first time, Elias smiled without ache. Mara watched and did not turn away the next time he came. He sat on the earth cross-legged, palms, open eyes closed, and when he opened them, Mara was there closer than before, grazing, calm, unbothered. Her body turned just enough that her shoulder faced him. Not a threat, not indifference, something else, something like trust. And with each quiet visit, the rhythm returned. Not the old one, not the one they'd lost, but a new one, slower, gentler, stitched together from fragments and memory and quiet forgiveness. Once he left a piece of fruit at the edge of the clearing and found it gone the next morning, the rind still wet. Another time, he spoke her name soft as breath, and though she didn't come, she didn't leave either. And that was enough. There were no dramatic gestures, no sudden transformations, only the steady returning of life to the empty parts of them. Both Elias found himself waking with purpose again. Not for duty, not for the past, but for now. The way the air felt before sunrise, the way the young Rhino sometimes flicked her tail and looked back at him as if curious, as if sensing what her mother knew. And Mara, she moved with the same limp, but her steps had weight now, not just from pain, but from presence, from having come through and still standing tall one day. As Elias turned to leave, Mara stepped forward just once and brushed the air near his shoulder with her breath. It lasted only a second, but it rewrote everything. Some things don't need to be said to be known. Some love is quiet, stubborn, patient. It doesn't fade, it waits, and when it is found again, it doesn't ask where you've been. Only if you're still here and ready to begin again. Some bonds do not ask for permission or explanation. They survive in silence, in memory, in the spaces we think are empty, until something breathes again and we realize it never truly left. Some love does not vanish. It grows quiet. It waits. It learns the shape of patience, and when the time is right, it returns, not to fix the past, but to remind us that what was real never stops. Being real, Elias no longer carries his grief like a wound, but like a thread that led him home, and Mara no longer walks only for survival, but with the weight of something worth protecting again. Theirs is not a story of rescue, but of recognition. Quiet promise between two beings who once found each other in the dark and did not forget. And maybe that's all we ever really need, to be remembered in the wild silence and to remember in return.